I'm going to share a couple stories with you all that I know you've heard parts of this, but you haven't heard the whole thing all together. And so I want to share it with you this morning. You know, I volunteered to speak a couple weeks ago. And then and I don't know why I volunteered, it just kind of popped out of my mouth. But after I volunteered, I began to think, okay, what do I want to talk about? And I'll tell you, it would be natural for me to talk about the great profession that I've been in for about 30 years. That is the profession of financial advice. And as you might imagine, I have no shortage of material. We have hours of content to talk about. I could talk about the economy. I could talk about the markets. I could talk about business in general. But as I thought about us, as I thought about our club and the point that we're at right now, I thought, what could I talk about that would probably have a greater impact? So this is the topic I chose, for better or for worse. I don't have a really great title for the topic, but what I did choose was my life in clubs. And as I go along, I hope you'll appreciate this. Now, I'm going to put my disclaimer right up front, and that is I recognize that we all see the world through our own lens, and so this is clearly through my own lens. A lot of times when I get done speaking, by the way, I walk away and go, I know I made some people mad. I'm not going to try to make anybody mad today. That's not my intent. So anyhow, when I think about clubs, I think about my first experience with Rotary, which came in 1975 when my boss and mentor, Roy Roberts, a.k.a. Joe Lynn's dad, went to Rotary every Thursday, first at the Holiday Inn and then at Royal Oak. Remember those days, Joe Lynn? Okay, especially Kids Day. Now, I was not a kid, but I was kind of a kid. I lived with the Roberts family at the homestead. Most of you know that. And so I was blessed to be able to go on one of those family days.
I don't think that was an option. I mean, there's nothing like being 16, 17 years old and going to visit Santa Claus.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was part of it, wasn't it? Yeah. So that was really my first experience with clubs, and in particular with Rotary. And my impression at the time was that this was a large group of influential community leaders that got together on a regular basis and had a good time. I'm sure they did a lot of good. I didn't see that part, but clearly had a good time. I remember one specific Rotary social that was held at the homestead. Now, you all remember when we had a Rotary social at the homestead, exact same location. It felt kind of surreal for me, but we had this social at the homestead, which is where I lived, again, with the Roberts family at the time. And I remember sitting there conversing with influential people in our community like Dave Brown. Remember Dave Brown, who is the president of the Mims Citrus Growers Association. There was Norm Hickey was there. He was the city manager. Our friend Poopsie, Bill Lyerly, who was the head of the Chamber of Commerce, was there. And just conversing, here I was, a teenager, talking about the current events of the day, my future, just all kinds of things. And I really, really enjoyed that, and it made a really big impression on me. Then, one summer afternoon, as I thought about it, it might have actually been this exact weekend in 1976, because it was a rare day off for me. It was a full day where I actually did not have to work at the homestead. We had a day off. And a friend of mine that I knew from elementary school who was on the football team came and visited me that day. His name was Bill Corley. His Bill Corley. And so we were goofing around. Remember, we used to hang out in the lake, Joe Lynn, and just doing all kinds of stuff, kind of crazy stuff that teenagers do. And I remember after the visit, Bill said to me, "Hey, you should come join our Interact Club." And I said, "You think they'd let me in? I'm not a jock. I'm not on the football team. I'm not real involved in school. You think they'd let me in?" And Bill said, you know, neither is your friend Martin Parrish, but Martin and I will help you out. They're a bunch of great guys. We'll get you in. He said, just come to our orientation meeting this Monday night and let the guys ask you a couple questions. So I was excited. I could not wait to tell Jolene's dad, but I think I probably didn't tell him that I was going to this meeting because I wanted to be kind of like a Rotarian also. So I got there that Monday night, and it was a room kind of like this, not quite this big, but all the guys were sitting around, cutting up, having a good time, and at the center of the room, on a table like this, there was a chair on top of the table. And so when it came my turn to ask questions, they had me sit in the chair on top of the table. By now, my excitement is turning to nervousness. I feel my heart thump, thump, thump. I'm sitting here on this chair on the top of the table. I don't remember all that was said now that I think about it, but I do distinctly remember one thing. And this is kind of bad, but I'm just putting it out there. That very afternoon at the homestead, I witnessed 2 of Jolene's horses doing it. And for some reason, my 17-year-old male brain felt like I had to share those details in this particular orientation. Okay? As they say, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but things did not go well. They said they had limited openings, and they picked the kid that was on the football team instead of me. Oh, and by the way, thank you for this therapy. For me, my therapist said that it's good to talk about it, especially in public. Okay. You know, it hurt at the time, but I had plenty of friends. I spent most of my time working, making money, but I was making $1.50 an hour, so it was, or maybe $1.75. It was working, making a little bit of money, but I was also thinking about my future in the U.S. Navy. So I joined the Navy, where I learned a lot about leadership and working with lots of people from different backgrounds. Then after my service in the Navy, I returned back to Titusville, where I eventually went into life insurance sales with a company that, let me say, was not embraced by the established insurance agent community. After about a year in the business, my old high school friend Martin Parrish said, "Randy, there's a new breakfast Rotary Club that meets at Royal Oak. They're a bunch of great guys. I'll get you in." So I went to about 3 meetings at the Titusville Rotary Club, the morning club, and after about the 3rd meeting, I had the opportunity to talk to one of the members about what I did professionally. I guess that didn't go well. The feedback I got was that some of the members of the club did not like the fact that I sold annuities where some people lost money, but it wasn't annuities that I sold. It wasn't the company that I was associated with. The company was Baldwin United. I had nothing to do with Baldwin United. The company that I was with United Agencies. So to be honest with you, I think it was kind of a lame excuse, but that's what happened. So here I am, 0-2 in this club thing. Thanks, Martin. You couldn't help me. Twice. But then my life in clubs took a turn, I think, for the better. When I overheard Eric Waldron and Tim Myers talking about a new club that met on Wednesday mornings at La Cita. Fortunately for me, they were not as stuck up as Interact or Rotary, and in April 1986, I became a founding member of the Kiwanis Club of North Brevard. It pays to keep stuff, by the way. Okay? The Kiwanis Club of North Brevard, Titusville, Florida, charter member. This is to certify that Randall T. Coleman is elected to active membership of this club and thus accorded the fellowship and privileges of such membership. That was April 1986. Our club started with a bang. Our charter membership started at about 45. Norm Wolfinger was our new state attorney. He was in our club. He was an absolute hoot. Abe Collinsworth was filling in as superintendent of public schools in Brevard County. State Representative Bud Gardner was here whenever the legislature was not in session. Kiwanis, back at that time, the international Kiwanis motto was, "We build." But for some reason, we, as in our club, did not build membership. At the time, it seemed like recruiting new members was not a priority. So it got to the point, by 1992, membership had gotten so slim that I was awarded Kiwanian of the Year in 1992. That's how bad things had gotten. By the time the next year came about, I became president, and we had about 12 members. Anybody know George Van Staten? He is a former Marine, invaded into Japan. I forget which particular island. For some reason, George, who was a charter member of our club, began to call us the Dirty Dozen. I remember specifically one meeting when the Titusville police chief, Carl Newland, who was by now a former member of our club, but came to speak as a guest speaker, stood at the podium kind of like this, and to make light of the matter, he said, like I would do right now, "Can everybody hear me okay?" And really, I was sitting there as the president, and really what he brought out was really the elephant in the room. Our club was dying. We were down to, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 people. By then, I had decided to go back to school to become a CPA. So I was working hard, going to school, still involved in Kiwanis. But the following year, after I was president, we as a club voted to shut the club down. So we went from charter member, 45 people, very influential people in 1986. By 1992, our motto, "We build, we didn't build," and we voted to shut the club down. Here's one of the ironies, though. That next year, the lieutenant governor, so in Kiwanis there's lieutenant governor, we call him district governor. The lieutenant governor brought a group of people to Titusville that very next year, and they started a new breakfast club. That new breakfast club thrived for several years, to my knowledge. Looking back, I realized that our biggest problem was that we did not recruit. It was not part of our DNA. When I look back, I realize that the new club was formed shortly after we gave up. It was clear to me that there was nothing wrong with Kiwanis. There was nothing wrong with Titusville. In fact, people ate breakfast in Titusville. And they actually ate breakfast at Kiwanis clubs in Titusville. Even though they didn't invite the Dirty Dozen in, they were successful for a number of years. This reminds me of a story by Zig Ziglar. Anybody ever hear of Zig Ziglar? Okay. If you have a sales and marketing background, Zig Ziglar tells a story about 2 real estate agents that he met while speaking at a conference, while he was speaking at a conference. When he asked the first one, he said, "How's business?" The first one said, "Business is terrible. Don't you realize the auto workers are on strike? Nobody's buying right now with the auto workers on strike." Zig said, "I had to admit, I started getting a little negative. I'm like, I need to disengage from this negative person." So he turned to the next person, and he thought, okay, I'll ask a broader question, okay, to hopefully get a better response. So he turned to the next person, and he says, "Well, how are things?" And the next person said, "Business is great. Don't you realize the auto workers are on strike?" that means that people have plenty of time to look for houses, because everybody knows the auto workers' strike is only going to be temporary. This person who is obviously